I was going to ask you earlier because I thought about it when you were talking about the honeybees dying off occasionally, just as as any other unit would. There was a thing a while back, and I don't know if it's still a thing now, about colony collapse disorder. What is that, and what is the issue with that still? Because I mean, assuming it didn't just go away.
That's a good point. I mean, in America, it's a massive problem. They're importing bees, tons of bees from bee colonies from Australia because of this. And you can see, I've seen pictures of hundreds of beehives all dead. There's a number of reasons. Nobody really knows the answer scientifically. It's likely to be caused by a huge tipping point, like we're going to have in the sea if we're not careful. A tipping point.
We should just say. So I should just say quickly that is the colony collapses is where, I mean, it is in the name, isn't it? I suppose, but where the colony just dies rapidly over a short period of time. And even as you just said, there are hundreds of them at the same time. Hundreds of colonies in one place will just die all at the same time.
Yeah. It's likely that there's a whole cocktail of reasons, really, I think, and it may just be the cocktail. They're just not strong enough. The whole cocktail's there, and it just tips them over. But I would think one of the biggest ingredients in that cocktail that's affecting them is going to be insecticides, pesticides. That is going to be the thing. But I mean, there are a whole number of things. So if you think that they have a huge problem just surviving anyway, because they've got dysentery type things. They've got, I mean, one of my hives, they were all born without wings, which is a virus which affects, a bit like thalidomide, a virus affects them in development. So I found them all walking along the lawn in the spring. They've got so many diseases, so they just about cope with this. And then new diseases introduced from Europe. They've got the stress of varroa mite on top of this. Diesel fumes, as I said, particles getting into their spiracles all play a part of this, really. They're stressed because they're moved from place to place in America. They moved from place to place. They moved all the way down the west coast to follow the flowering trees and peaches and things like that. And then on top of that, you've got somebody who sprays a field somewhere, and it just knocks them over, really. And I've had this myself. I was next to a farm where they sprayed. You could actually smell the spray in the air, and they just died.
Yeah. And I know it on all, or the vast majority of the honeybees in the world, aren't they all from the same stock not too very long ago either? They're mostly Italian, aren't they? Are they not? Is that something I've just read?
There are various subspecies of bees around the world. So you've got Apis mellifera is the species, but they're various subspecies. They all interbreed, so they're not separate species. And what happened, I'm not sure exactly when this happened, was it 30s, 40s or 50s, but the Italian bees were introduced into the UK because they are very prolific, but they're also very vicious.
Right.
And that all goes part and parcel of it, but they're yellow bees, and the yellowness you see in bees originally came from that introduction, because I said earlier, the native British honey bee is Apis mellifera is a black bee, and that's what we're trying. British Beekeepers Association are trying to breed back that native bee, and also being a placid bee. I mean, there are some hives you can open up without any protection at all, without gloves or anything. But I could never do that with mine.
How would you breed back a species like that? If they, I mean, I'm assuming the wild stock here have now interbred with any imported stock, and they've now become either watered down or extinct in their purity. So they may still exist in part form.
They're around. The characteristics are around, and various species of dogs you've seen, subspecies of dogs you can see, from Chihuahuas to Great Danes, have all come from, say, a wolf type of ancestor. Same thing you could do with breeding back the black bee, black honey bee, looking at the characteristics you want. However, it's very difficult to breed. You can't breed honeybees like you can, well, not easily, like you can any other insect or animal, because the queen flies off and she will be inseminated by perhaps 15 different drones, and they may be all from different species or subspecies of the bee across a wide area. It could be miles difference between them. So what some beekeepers, breeders are doing are finding areas where there aren't any bees, on top of mountains and various other places. And a lot of this is going on in Europe easily, more easily. But we're a small country, so it's very difficult to find a place where you can isolate. You can artificially inseminate them, and that is, there are programs going on with that in universities and various places.
How on earth would you do that? I'm assuming it's the same as a cow, but with a very, very small version of it. I don't know.
Same principle. You hold it in a tube. It's under a microscope. You have manipulating tools, which with a very fine needle injection, and you inseminate the bee with the drone sperm that you've taken. Very, a very time-consuming and difficult process, can only be done in a laboratory.
Yeah,
so it's not done generally. So, and when you bear in mind that that you can only breed usually one new generation a year for bees, it can take hundreds of years, even if you can artificially inseminate them with the right bee that looks black, it's got the right behavior, perfect, inseminate the bee, you've got to wait for that generation and take from that generation again.
And then you risk having such a small genetic pool, surely.
I don't think that's not necessarily going to be a problem, but I think the variety is probably there. And so I don't think that's going to be a problem. But you can breed lots of things into them. You can breed cleanliness into bees, so you can check whether they're cleaning out the hive. Some bees are bee subspecies and colonies are very good at cleaning their hives, and some aren't. And some are very vicious, some aren't vicious. Some are very productive. Some can last the winter better than others. There's all these different things that you can select for, but it does take a long time, a lot of patience with this, and that's why the British Bee Breeders Association are quite good for doing this, really.
Sure, and I suppose
stop introductions. That's the key thing, is to stop introductions, which are bringing in diseases.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, apart from anything else, they're sort of an indicator of what else might be going on with the wild bees as well, which is what people are more worried about, because enough people are interested and there's enough money involved for people to care about honeybees. Whereas I don't think, if it's going to take that much effort and finance and everything else to artificially inseminate a honeybee, I don't think you'll find many people, going around doing that to solitary bees and so on, which may be suffering the same fate. You never know, because people don't.
Yeah, you need a proper lab and a decent microscope and some really good and probably quite expensive manipulating tools. It's probably going on in universities only, really.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, also the last threat that I know of, that I've read about, certainly, as I don't know of, is the old what's it called? Killer hornets, or whatever they are. Are they a serious problem, or are they? Because I know they exist in the UK now, but they've been caught a few times just up the road from here, actually, in the other side of the border in Gloucestershire. They got caught there 2018, I think it was.
Yes, they are a big problem, and they really need to be exterminated wherever they're found, really, and the government are taking it seriously. So
I should explain as well. That one is a big hornet it's come from Europe, hasn't it? But originally they're from Asia, and they can swipe out thousands of honeybees within half an hour as prey, and obviously that causes more problems because you don't know what they're doing in the wild either. They could be doing to other bumblebee colonies.
Well, at least they're going to be displacing other insect populations, which is not good, really. But with global warming, we're going to get this all the time.
And what
when,
can
when are we
actually be
going to
done?
have when are we going to have mosquitoes here that carry pathogens? You know, this is what's going to happen. Our lives are going to significantly change for our great grandchildren. Our lives are going to significantly change unless we do something now. And you know, it all comes back to the climate